In this concept video, we are going to look at the unit circle and reference angles, which we're going to kind of review from before, and doing sine, cosine, tangent. Let's look at this coordinate plane. So if we look in quadrant 1, we can look at this as all students take calc. So if you remember, in each quadrant all students take calc, then you know that in quadrant 1 all the signs are positive. In quadrant 2 you know the sign, because student starts with S, the sign is positive, everything else is negative. In quadrant 3 you notice that tangent, the T, is positive, and then you know in quadrant 4 that the cosine is positive and everything else is negative. So at least you can figure out what signs you need when you're doing sine, cosine, tangent. So let's look at drawing for number 1. We're gonna draw the angle of rotation. So we're gonna draw 330. So we start here and we go around. 330 is almost 360, but not quite. And then I'm going to look at the reference angle. So how far am I from the x-axis here? Well, 330 to 360 is 30 degrees. So I'm looking at a 30-degree angle. And I know from my coordinate plane up here that if I'm here in quadrant 4, that is the calc piece, and I know that the cosine is positive. So I know that the cosine is positive, and that means that the secant is positive because that is reciprocal. And then I know that the sine, the cosine, the cosecant, and the cotangent are all negative. Then, either memorizing or using the hand trick, I can look at a 30-degree angle, and I know that it's root 3 over 2 and 1 over 2. And we know the first value is the cosine or the x. And we know that the second value is the sine or the y value. So let's go ahead and fill it in. So sine is 1/2, cosine is root 3 over 2, tangent is, we'll write it up here, 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2, which is really 1/2 times 2 over root 3, because when I divide this flips over, and then the 2's cancel, and I have 1 over root 3, but I know I need to multiply by root 3. So I get root 3 over 3. And then for cosecant, I flipped the sign, which is 2, and for cosine, I flipped root 3 over 2, so it's 2 over root 3, but I know I have to multiply by root 3, so it's 2 root 3 over 3. And then if I look at cotangent, I have to flip over root 3 over 3, which becomes 3 over root 3 multiplied by root 3, so I get 3 root 3 over 3, which is just really root 3. So let's go ahead, pause the video, and try number 2. For number 2, let's start off. Let's do our angle of rotation is 135, so I know I'm over here in the second quadrant. And then I'm going to look at my reference angle. If I drop the perpendicular here, I know that 135 is 45 degrees away from the x-axis. So then if I use the hand trick, I know that it's root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. And I know that this is cosine and this is sine. And then if I look at my coordinate plane above, it is in the second quadrant, which is here, which means the sign is positive. So the sine and its reciprocal, the cosecant, are positive, and then everything else is negative. So then my sine is root 2 over 2, cosine is root 2 over 2, tangent is sine over cosine, which becomes 1, and then cosecant, I flip over sine, so it's 2 over root 2, multiply by root 2, so I have 2 root 2 over 2, and then the secant is the same, so I end up with 2 root 2 over 2, and the cotangent flip over 1 is just 1. So just a little note, when I do the sine, I have root 2 over 2, right? And when I do the cosecant, I flip it over, so I have 2 over root 2, which means I have to multiply by root 2 to rationalize the denominator, so the bottom becomes 2, and the top becomes 2 root 2. That's how I got that. Go ahead and do number 3 for homework, and then we're going to go on to number 4. So number 4, I'm looking at angle of rotation. So negative 180 is here, and then I go a little past that, and that's 240. And if I drop my perpendicular here, I know that 240 is 60 away from 180. So I'm looking at a 60-degree angle, so I can go ahead and memorize or use your hand. So I have a 60-degree angle, so that is 1/2 and root 3 over 2. And I know because it's in the second quadrant, again, the sine is positive, so I know the sine and the cosecant are positive, and then everything else is negative. And then I fill it in. This is cosine, this is sine, so I have root 3 over 2. Cosine is 1/2, and if I have root 3 over 2 over 1/2, I flip it over, and the 2's cancel, and I just get root 3. Cosecant, I flip over root 3 over 2, and I end up with 2 root 3 over 3. And then I flip over 1/2 and I get 2. And then I flip over root 3 and I get 1 over root 3, which is really root 3 over 3 if I rationalize the denominator. Go ahead and pause the video and try number 5. So let's draw the angle of rotation. So I start here and I'm going negative 360 plus another little bit makes 420. If I drop the perpendicular to the x-axis, 420 is 60 degrees away from 420. So I know if I use the hand trick, at 60 I have 1/2 and root 3 over 2. And I know that this is cosine, this is sine. And in the quadrant, in the fourth quadrant, I know that calc. So cosine is positive, so I know that cosine and secant are both positive, and everything else is negative. So let's go ahead and figure that out. So sine is root 3 over 2, cosine is 1/2, tangent is root 3 over 2 over 1/2, and I flip it over and I can choose cancel, and I just get root 3. And then cosecant is 2 over root 3, and then I need to rationalize, so 2 root 3 over 3. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so 1/2 becomes 2. And then cotangent is root 3, and I flip it and I have 1 over root 3, which means that I have root 3 over 3. So notice the difference between number 4 and number 5 are the signs. Alright, go ahead and try number 6 for homework, and we'll have another video on radians.